1.5 Bitcoin grant to do these 3 on-site trainings and design labs where you would use these innovation principles. You would bring Bitcoin technologists together with Bitcoin community developers and leaders, and then you'd bring the Christian leaders. And you would use design principles to understand what are the needs related to money and economics within your community that you're serving. How can then Bitcoin be a tool to further advance your work in serving this community? So that was the grant, and I had already met you. And so we thought, absolutely, first choice, we got to go to El Salvador. We got to show all these folks what is happening here at Bitcoin Beach. So
I'm excited for today's show because, usually we talk about, what's, I guess would be the fourth most important thing in my life, Bitcoin. Of course, I got to put my wife and kids before that. But then for me, like what drives me is the belief that we're here on earth to serve God. Yep. And so I have a special affinity when I can do stuff with other Bitcoiners that share that kind of core belief with me. And both Jordan and Oshua, we've been able to do a number of things together over the years that have kind of brought the Christian community and the Bitcoin community together. So first of all, we'd just love for you guys to introduce yourselves and a little bit of your history in the Bitcoin space.
Sure. Yeah. So my name is Jordan Bush. I'm the director of TGFB Media, which exists to help the broader Christian world.
Maybe tell people what that is.
So TGFB, great. So TGFB Media stands for Thank God for Bitcoin Media. I was one of the authors of the book Thank God for Bitcoin. And then in the aftermath of that, there was a lot better reception than we were expecting. We initially thought, us and our moms will really appreciate this book. And then just the response was better than that. And so we just ended up deciding to start a business to, again, create events and other books and resources to try to orange pill the broader Christian world and the, according to some estimates, trillions of dollars that they hold and deploy to serve people all over the world. So we ended up starting that, and so have run that for the last 3.5 years.
Yeah, it was actually dinner with Jimmy Song last night.
Yep.
Yeah. Of course, watching him order his 2 beef entrees and then an order of fish for dessert. So that was
sounds about right.
It was so typical Jimmy.
Yes,
you can always count on him.
Correct.
To kind of like the servers are like, what? Like, you want that or that? No, both.
Yeah.
And then fish for dessert. Yeah. And they're like, for dessert? Like, yeah. So it was. But I mean, Jimmy's one of the people that convinced me to go on carnivore diet. Like just seeing how full of energy he is all the time, how fit he is, and I was like, all right, I've seen him and other Bitcoiners that have come through, and so
I just found out the other day that I can't remember if it was vegan or vegetarian, but for a long time when he was first programming on Bitcoin and stuff, he was either a vegetarian or vegan, and he showed me some pictures. It is just bonkers knowing how he is now to think about him thinking so.
Did he look different?
Oh yeah.
Okay.
He called himself skinny fat. Was, and that was just really fit.
Super fit. Yeah.
So
awesome.
When we did our event down here in El Salvador, our first time here, about 2 years ago, Jimmy was joining us, and he of course said, "Okay, I need to have steak, 3 meals a day, basically." Yeah. And so maybe it was lost in translation or something as we talked to the kitchen crew for our event.
Hey guys, we don't do commercials here at the Bitcoin Beach podcast because we want to keep it focused on what's happening here in El Salvador. But we have something special that we're promoting right now because we have the Stay at Bitcoin Beach project that's just been launched. We've always wanted to make sure that when Bitcoiners come to El Salvador, they have a truly Bitcoin through and through experience in their accommodations, in being able to stay at a place that mostly has other Bitcoiners. And so we came up with this idea, and I actually found my buddy Peter here to take the bull by the horns and make it happen. So, Peter, tell us what you got cooking for us.
Thanks, Mike. Stay at bitcoinbeach.com. This is the website and the brand that we started, that it will host a growing number of premier properties that we have both in the Puntamongo area and here in El Zonte. The first is Puntamongo Villas, which was the original place that Mike, you and I bought 16 years ago. And it's been newly remodeled. 6 villas that sit upon the best break, my opinion, in the country, but it's stunning. The pool's been redesigned. We've got a bar, the cantina, the full restaurant. Casa Agua Fria is a small little cabin in the same area, and it sits right on the Agua Fria beach. A little bit more intimate. It's great for families that want to go out and kind of get away. And then here in El Zonte, there's 3 properties. First, it's the Citadel Mar, which, Mike, you put your heart and soul into. And we're sitting here now in the podcast studio that has 2 main houses overlooking the break of El Zonte. Beautiful infinity pool, gym, just got a first-class place to stay. And then a new condo that just got released in the Barefoot project that's on the other side of the river. 5th story overlooking the ocean. Again, beautiful 2-bedroom. And then 7 suites that we're opening up called Bitcoin Beach Suites that is really close to where a lot of the Bitcoin Beach story started. So when you come, you can use Bitcoin to book your stay right on the website. You also can use it for transportation, for food, for all the services that we continue to add to the business. So we'd love to have you. Please go to stayatbitcoinbeach.com. You'll see pictures. You'll see all the different descriptions and information of the properties. And you can hit us up either on our webpage or on Instagram, and we'll get back to you. We'd love to have you out. Please come to stay at Bitcoin Beach.
They literally gave us steak, breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And we meant to say, just with steak, have some steak available. Instead, it was only steak, all 3 meals for like a week. And there was this poor Indian guy who had joined. And he's like, midweek, please, can we have something different than steak?
Well, I remember I was the one in charge of like arranging all that. First I'm telling them we didn't have beef everything. They had other stuff. It wasn't just steak,
we did.
but and then I had to go back to them. I'm like, okay, well, people are complaining there's too much steak, but we still need to have some steak.
Yeah.
And then we had a vegan show up, and I was like, oh my gosh. Now I got to tell them to cook something for
Americans. Goodness gracious.
For the
Bitcoin is for everyone.
Yes, and I was like,
Yeah, that's so funny.
But I do remember Peter telling me though the one meal that they had a bunch of stuff. Jimmy comes and loads up a steak, and he's like walking away. He's like, "Wow, I wonder what everybody else is gonna eat."
you had to get all the steak you needed before Jimmy went for seconds.
Yes.
Or there'd be nothing left.
You don't want to be behind Jimmy. And if you ever go to a group meal, like what's a group meal, you don't want to sit at Jimmy's table because if you get up to go to the bathroom, like I did at one group meal, you come back and there's no food left. So.
And he really eats fast too. It's quite impressive.
It's amazing how much he can put away.
Yeah, I know.
Like it's So before we rabbit hole on Jimmy's steak eating, maybe this is a good time. Well, first you need to introduce yourself, and then we'll talk about what that first conference was that we did in El Zonte. And I think we have a video that kind of shows some of the time there.
Awesome. Yeah. So my name is Oshawa Hawthorne. I'm the founder of Brilliance Labs. So this is an organization that I started about 4 going on 5 years ago. There was a church I had been involved in, formerly large legacy church with a lot of real estate, a large building, but it had declined over the years. And so we helped lead the congregation in a strategic closure and cast a vision of how to close the church in a healthy way, and then take the assets from that and then invest them back into our community. And so I was tasked with leading that process and selling the property, starting the nonprofit. And just because of my just unique gifts and personality and quirks, it ended up being like a innovation lab and a Bitcoin treasury company, And so we started this organization, started giving grants locally, and then on the side with another group, I was becoming a Bitcoiner. It's class of 2020. If you guys remember the Clubhouse days of the last bull market. And so I was on Clubhouse as we're all in lockdown, and I'm listening to all these guys talk, and I'm learning about Bitcoin, and I'm thinking, okay, I'm going down the rabbit hole. No, I want to find the other Christians in this space. I'm involved in global mission work. Basically, that just means seeing the hope of Jesus go to all peoples on earth. And so I'm like, let's go find the people in that space that are already into Bitcoin, or let's go orange peel them. And so that began what's now going on a 5-year research project on how to orange peel that whole world. And so eventually, as I began, we did these trainings. We did an event with you in El Salvador. We did one in Kenya, partnering with Gridless. We had some folks from Fedi there. And then this last fall, we were in India, partnering with a circular economy project there. And then I was eventually able to kind of combine my worlds so that my hat of leading a local nonprofit in our city of Portland was able to merge with this global work of figuring out how Bitcoin can serve basically the kingdom of God and the flourishing of all people through the good news about Jesus, and viewing Bitcoin as a key tool for that, and finding the value proposition for these organizations. We kind of were able to combine that. And so that brings me here. I saw Roman in Lugano. I was doing a master class at that Plan B forum on orange pilling NGOs. And
real quick. So we were, Asha and I haven't worked formally together at any point, but informally, just because there's only so many people who are working at the intersection of Christianity and Bitcoin. We work a lot together. And so again, we've done TGFB events together. So you meet Roman in Lugano.
Yeah. So he says to me, we want you to come to El Salvador and be a part of our summit. We want you to talk about God at the summit. He's like, we love Thank God for Bitcoin, and we want Thank God for Bitcoin there. So I'm thinking, I'm not Thank God for Bitcoin. But he doesn't know that. Yeah. So I asked him, I say, oh, that's wonderful, Roman. We would be honored to come again to El Salvador, especially in late January when I'm up in the cold in Portland. And then I say, Roman, can we bring 2 people from Thank God for Bitcoin? He's like, sure, no problem. So then I call up Jordan. Hey, you want to go to El Salvador? We've been invited.
That's funny. That is really funny. So, and I think one other thing that just to throw out there that Jordan and I have in common, I think a lot of people know that. Well, initially I came to El Salvador on a surf trip. What led us to move down here was missions work, and you were serving as a missionary in Uruguay for a number of years. And I think when I first reached out to you, you guys had just gotten back from that, we were laughing because the first Bitcoin conference we went to was the BitConf in Uruguay, and you were there, and you didn't know about it.
Well, the crazy thing was I found out that where you guys met was literally 5 minutes from my house. I'd been in Bitcoin for a month at that time. And so just to think about even Jimmy, who I later worked with, all these guys were just
Jimmy
right
was
there. All these guys were right down the street from my house and had no clue. So wild.
Yeah.
So we my wife and I got married young, and then we knew that we wanted to go basically share the way that Jesus had changed our life and go help other people around the world. Moved to Uruguay, and it was about half of our church members in this 35-person church were Venezuelan immigrants, and so that was kind of my introduction to currency debasement and how it affects the lives of normal people. And so 4 years later, when I got into Bitcoin, it was just kind of an overlap, just seeing it as like an overlap of these two worlds. Like Bitcoin was created to be a money that doesn't allow governments to do to their people what had been done to the people of Venezuela.
Yeah, and I think we've talked some. I think early on in the Bitcoin space there was some pushback from church leaders against Bitcoin. Yeah. They felt like this Ponzi scheme, or you guys are just focused on money or making a lot of money, and so it was this. There was kind of this like natural hesitancy. But I think as pastors and other church leaders have seen the way governments use the financial system to control their people. They've realized for the churches to really have sovereignty and be able to say whatever they feel they need to say without worrying about the government, they are at risk when their finances can be shut off by the government. And that's we've seen that historically. That's what governments do. They go after finances, and we see that in a lot of countries around the world, specifically with churches. And that's one of the reasons we've seen a lot of the people in the missionary community get interested in Bitcoin, because they have challenges getting money using the traditional financial system because governments block it. And so with Bitcoin being permissionless, they can send directly to the missionaries and kind of bypass that. So I think that's opened a lot of them to kind of understanding long term why they do need to understand Bitcoin. And so I think you guys kind of came together, and I'm not sure how that came together with both of you to plan the first event here in El Salvador. But Paco, why don't you go ahead and roll that video, and while he's kind of queuing it up, well, you guys can kind of explain how that came about and the thought pattern. I think we had a meeting in Miami at the Bitcoin
it was in
conference
Miami, and we were I was chatting with you and Eric Hirschman about how to do this event, both in casting vision for it, raising funds, and training these Central American missionaries. And so it was largely a planned event with a couple of my partners, and then Jordan, he wanted to get down there. He hired the video guy, and we were able to document the whole thing. But this was a grant that we had won.
Maybe turn the volume up for a second, Paco, and we'll just
transform a local economy. Mike Peterson came to El Salvador a number of years ago to serve the people and the missionaries who lived in this town. Years later, the town has been turned upside down, in part because of magic internet money that we call Bitcoin.
This all began about 3 years ago as I was serving, working with refugees, working with a number of mission organizations, and I got into Bitcoin, and I started studying it and learning, and I started discovering, wow, there's a lot of Christ followers here. And so I went into the Bitcoin community, and I found the believers, and then I went into the missions community, and I said, okay, where are the Bitcoiners?
So I'm curious as to how you guys came together in that, and then I know this vision was somewhat hatched, I think primarily by you, but then you brought Jordan in. And
so I had two other colleagues that I was working with, and there's a network called Missionaries, and they offered a grant. It was an innovation grant for just an innovative idea related to global mission work. And so myself, my colleague Nate, and then this other gentleman, Tim, we worked together, and we found out about it like 2 weeks before it was due, and we just hammered out this grant proposal for $50,000 to do 3 different design labs.
When we talk about sats here, come on.
Right. So that would
Okay.
be
Well, at
75
the
75 or 750,000 sats.
So at the time, Bitcoin was in the 30s.
So it was a couple Bitcoins.
So
Bitcoin and a half.
1.5 Bitcoin grant to do these 3 on-site trainings and design labs where you would use these innovation principles. You would bring Bitcoin technologists together with Bitcoin community developers and leaders, and then you'd bring the Christian leaders. And you would use design principles to understand what are the needs related to money and economics within your community that you're serving. How can then Bitcoin be a tool to further advance your work in serving this community? So that was the grant, and I had already met you. And so we thought, absolutely, first choice, we got to go to El Salvador. We got to show all these folks what is happening here at Bitcoin Beach. So called you up and said, hey, we want to go. And then I'm like, okay, how do we get the absolute highest caliber Bitcoiners? How do we get the most influential mission leaders? And how do we get the local Central American, South American workers that are just in the trenches that we want to orange pill? So of course, then I call up my buddy Jordan and I say, okay, help us get the best people to this event.
Yeah, and so I mean, just again, because I've worked in the mission world, I know what that's like, and so just I've been a bridge between those two worlds, along with Ashwa and his team and stuff, and so reached out to Jimmy, reached out to some of these other guys, and just kind of communicated, hey, like this is a very unique opportunity to be here, and so they again, Gabe Higgins is another one of the authors of Thank God for Bitcoin. So him and his wife got to experience the incredible medical care and dental care in El Salvador while they were here. They all came away, very impressed.
Fell and chipped her tooth,
and then just was thrilled with the care that she got and stuff. So
her son came back with her husband like 6 months later to get his teeth done. So.
Exactly. Yeah. So
funny.
so I mean, again, just it's a I mean, in some ways niche, but again, as I mentioned, just the amount of capital that's controlled by the Christian world and that's deployed globally is, I mean, you're talking, I mean, hundreds of, I mean, just thousands and tens of thousands of Bitcoin that's being deployed every year. And again, although while as we work primarily, TGFB has worked primarily with American Christians and trying to create events stateside to do things, and it's been varying degrees of difficulty in trying to convince them and demonstrate to them the value proposition of Bitcoin. The organizations and leaders, as you mentioned, who do have a more global focus and who are working globally, they have been much quicker to adopt Bitcoin and to be willing to overcome some of their natural biases for the sake of of overcoming issues, money-related issues around the globe. So,
and I know that. From scratch, starting a conference was probably more than you realized you were biting off. But you guys have been able to get like such amazing speakers. I remember even the first year I was there, like Tim Tebow showed up.
Just crazy. Yeah.
We had impromptu meeting with him, and I didn't realize that he had grown up as a missionary kid. And so that was neat getting to meet him. But I think Preston Pish was there. I mean, he had like all kinds of like amazing speakers at the conference. And so I think the Thank God for Bitcoin events have been something that people really look forward to. And it's a way for them to connect with people that not only share their same view about sound money, but also about eternity. And so I think that's been something for all Christian Bitcoiners. It's been a huge asset.
Yeah, when we first started out, so we basically with 6 weeks anticipation, Ashwa was the impetus for this. He reached out to Jimmy in 2021 and said, "Hey, you should try to organize like a Christian Bitcoin event for people who had read Thank God for Bitcoin the book and enjoyed it." And so based on that, we did a Zoom call, and so me and another guy named David, great guy, ended up working together to plan the conference with about 6 weeks before it started. And crazily, against all odds, had about 175 people show up, including guys like Tim Tebow, who we just happened to get a connection to via Jimmy, and then somebody like Blake Masters was the head of Peter Thiel's Capital company, and so like just a whole bunch, and then just a whole bunch of awesome people. So it ended up just primarily was Christian Bitcoiners, small but passionate growing group. It was just a way for them to find each other. And then beyond that, also there was other, everyone who was there wasn't necessarily Christian. We had other people who, again, like you mentioned, like somebody like a Robert Breedlove, like he is somebody who was one of the authors of the book. He came and showed up, and again, just a whole bunch of other people were very generous. Larry Lepard, Greg Foss.
That was the best.
Greg Foss was the best. Again, he
didn't drop the first F-bomb.
He
at the
did
conference.
not. Actually, he didn't drop any. We jokingly said when he first got there that we were going to do like a gift to financial gift to nonprofits for every F-bomb that was dropped, and he actually didn't drop a single one. So it was impressive. But yeah. So over the years, that's been something.
I miss Foss.
I do too.
We need Greg.
We need him come back.
We need him back.
The
Greg,
children
we miss
need you.
So that was something where just over the years we've tried to just continue to grow both the following and the scope of the event, because when you just do a Christian Bitcoin event, we're still so early that it's something that a lot of people, it just seems weird or cringe, even in the Christian world. So the temptation is for Bitcoin community to think that we're cringe and the Christian world to think we're cringe. So we're kind of in no man's land. And so with one of the biggest event that we've done was in 2024. We did it in Nashville, and so we did it as kind of like the first day we did a 2-day event. The first day was like just a broader Christian economics conference, and so then we could talk about some of the philosophical and like theological issues that are at the root of this question of the ethics of money production, and we were able to invite people who are not Bitcoiners at all, aren't connected with that community, including the one that blew my mind was Jörg Guido Hulsmann, who is the author of the book, The Ethics of Money Production, which he's an Austrian economist and Mises Fellow, teaches at a university in France. He came, and even though he's not a Bitcoiner, was willing to come and be at the event, put his name behind the event, and speak about the ethics of money production. And so to this day, one of the most moving things that I've experienced over the last 4 years was him showing up at the event and looking around, and he remarked that he's like, I never could have imagined that there'd be so many people who would be interested in this issue of the ethics of money production. And so that's kind of been a big part of what we've tried to do, is just raise that issue and the moral and moral issues that are at the heart of it, and again use Bitcoin as a vehicle to a practical way to address that issue. So
Yeah. And I know besides that, you guys have a podcast.
Yep.
You've recently put out a children's book.
Yeah.
Oh, did you bring any with you?
I didn't bring any with me right now.
Oh,
I've got it back
shoot.
in the room. I should have, but yeah.
So I know you guys have wrestled with the thing that I think a lot of people in the space have wrestled with. Is like, how do you think this is important? This is something that's needed. But how do you make it sustainable? And conferences are very expensive to put on.
You saying it's hard to run a Bitcoin company, Mike?
Well, especially when it's like you're not like an exchange or a wallet. You're like, your goal is educational, like bringing people together.
Yeah.
And so I know you guys have kind of weaved and you started it. I think, naturally as, Bitcoiners, you kind of want something to be sustainable. So you want it to be, hey, if we can do this as a for-profit, that's probably the best route to go. But I think ultimately a lot of times it is hard for certain things to operate as a for-profit. So I think you guys are kind of exploring now, how does this move more into the nonprofit realm where, it's not people paying because they're, they're looking to make money from it, but that they can donate because they want this to go forward. They want to see there to continue to be a space for people that are bringing Bitcoin to the church leaders and, creating a space that connects Christian Bitcoiners. And so I know you guys are kind of in the middle of all that now, so you probably don't have any answers, but just if you have any insights in that.
Yeah, I think one of the things, for a lot of people, it was a surprise to them that we weren't a nonprofit, just both because of the nature of things. It sounds like something that would make a natural nonprofit, and because to those who were more on the inside, there were ways in which we've acted more like a nonprofit in some ways. Like we would give away tickets, and we'd do different things. We didn't want money to be an impediment to anyone, and so if there were people who reached out to us and said, "Hey, I can't afford this," we would happily give away tickets. And so, as time went on, it really is one of these things where you're just like, all right, in order to make conferences work, there just requires upfront capital and stuff like that. And then usually the way that these things work, it's a combination of ticket sales and sponsorships. And so and then in order to get both of those things, you need to have big name speakers. And so again, the Bitcoin community has been absurdly generous to come and speak at our conferences for free. So many of these big names who we've already mentioned, and even other ones, we've had Alex Gladstein, we've had, a whole bunch of other folks who just came, Parker Lewis came and just were very generous with their time, came for free, primarily because we were piggybacking off of the larger Bitcoin events as they were there. But again, over the course of the years, it's like, which comes first, the conference ticket sales or the sponsorships? And so I just wrestled with not trying to overpromise for the sake of getting these sponsorships, and not trying to, it's just a balance to do that well. And so we also, if we were willing to shitcoin, we could have easily been 7-figure company and denominated in horrible gross fiat. We could have had dozens of Bitcoin if we were willing to just accept money from shitcoin projects. We had people reach out to us over the years and try to be willing to be the presenting sponsor and pay several Bitcoin to be our presenting sponsor, and we just weren't willing to do it.
When you can print your own money.
Exactly. And so we weren't willing to do that. And then, I just didn't want to go in there and promise some good Bitcoin company like a river.com or somebody who makes sense to be the presenting sponsor for an event like this, where they're going to be able to, it's going to be able to make economic sense as a for-profit entity for them to do that. So we had people who we partnered with over the years who were willing to do that. And then other people from the broader, tangentially related to the space who were willing to support us, again, not because they thought they were going to get money in return, but just because they wanted to support us ideologically. And so as we've, again, just made the decision a number of months ago to change TGFB into a nonprofit project, that's been we just received a lot of encouragement from people who are just saying, hey, like this is going to make it easier. People from in the industry who are like, hey, we can now give to you in ways, we can justify it as this is a nonprofit thing versus it having to make business sense. So we've made that decision a few months ago and are in the process of raising money just for, so if there's people who are out there who are interested in supporting what we're doing, like we'd love to have their help.
So what is the best way? And we'll make sure at the end we give them information again, but what is the best way if there's people like, hey, I want to see this continue. We want to support this. Should they reach out to you directly? What's...
Yeah, so the way that it's going to function is, so we just decided, again, we had a bunch of conversations, so TGFB is going to come under and be an arm of Brilliance Labs, and so you can go to brilliancelabs.org/TGFB, and you can give in Bitcoin. The only thing that we really want, not keep your fiat, but you can go on there.
We will convert your fiat to Bitcoin, gladly.
Exactly. So you can go on there, and again, that video that we just watched is on there. And so again, we would love to partner with people. Yesterday, Stephen Pollack from the Bitcoin Policy Institute did a presentation on donating Bitcoin. And it was just incredibly moving to think about, he just presented the idea that a lot of Bitcoiners who, whether they've been in the space for a short period of time or a long period of time, they're very reticent to donate their Bitcoin. They're willing to donate fiat or stocks and those kind of things. And so he and his work for Bitcoin Policy Institute, he says, I listen to people, give me those arguments. And then I just say to them, well, actually, that's exactly why I would love for you to give Bitcoin because of all those reasons. And so we just, have experienced a lot of generosity from our community and other communities as well. And again, we want to be able to do this for the long haul and would love to receive, Bitcoin donations to do that. So
awesome. Well, it's exciting to see you guys kind of tying up in that way and seeing how that was all brought together. And would definitely encourage people that this is something worth supporting. I mean, it's... I've seen firsthand the work that goes into it and the impact that it has. So excited about that. Curious for the only event that I think that you guys have done so far that I didn't make it to was the one in Kenya. So kind of would love a little bit of synopsis of what went on there, and then if you want to talk about, I know it's a little bit sensitive about the last conference in India because some of the government things. So you decide what you want to share and what not. But
no pressure, Ash.
Yeah. So, and then just one last follow up with Jordan sharing. It's a great honor to be able to work more closely and formally with him going forward, and so he brings so much to the table and the network he's already built and his giftings and passions. But I think Jordan would tell you he likes working in community. And so far he's been solo running this LLC. And so he joins.
Which can feel very lonely and
it's again,
daunting.
It's not that you're not willing to wear many hats, but it is one of these things where it's just like, if you're always wearing, that's usually a means to an end. And so,
So we have a wider team. We have a gentleman who leads our local Portland work. Myself and Nate lead the global and Bitcoin piece. We now have a research intern who's working on his PhD at Oxford on Bitcoin and global missions. He's an anthropologist. He's actually going to spend some time down in El Zante, hopefully. So Jordan joins a great team. We've also been leading events, and they're less of the formal conference, show up, hear the speakers from up front. Instead, they are curated summits and gatherings where we're actually saying, hey, we're shooting for a small group, maybe 20 or 25 individuals. We're hand-picking them. We're interviewing everyone that comes to make sure they're the right fit. We're often paying for all the expenses for them to be there. They just have to pay for their airfare, but when they're on the ground, we host it all. And then through this, you were with us in India. I don't know if you heard this. One of the participants, he's an Anglican Archbishop, and he said to us, so it's a week-long event.
But just to clarify, in India,
In
like
India.
he's an Indian,
He's an Indian
Anglican
Anglican Archbishop, yes. But he's over churches globally. So he says to us, he's like, this is at the end of the event. He says, I saw that it was going to be 5 days and you're going to be talking about Bitcoin. And I thought, we only do our meetings for like 1 or 2 days and they're full, but then we're done. How are they going to talk to us for 5 days about Bitcoin all day long? So he said, I was planning on coming for a day or two and then I would disappear and I would leave. And he said, but at the end of the week, he's like, this was amazing. You kept me the entire time. And so we go through this very curated, almost like experience of introducing the concepts of Bitcoin, bringing in innovation, kind of design thinking principles that help you discover and kind of from within reach solutions, as opposed to us telling you this is what you have to do. It's a process of self-discovery. And so we kind of create this experience and this event. In El Salvador, it was very much a failing forward. Let's experiment. So, but we're ideating and we're slowly improving what we're building. So in Kenya, we were hosted by the Gridless folks. So Eric and his co-founder Philip were a great help. We had 2 folks from FEDI. We had a gal from Machinkura.
African Bitcoin
agreed.
company.
They use SMS wallets for transactions and stuff. And then we had a bunch of these leaders from Nigeria and Darfur and Kenya. And we had some former African bankers, guys that lead the Nigerian missions association, and they're the head finance people for like a couple hundred Nigerian organizations. And then we orange pill them. And we find that highly intensive hands-on approach with a smaller group of influential people goes really far. Like we had one guy, Matt, who came from the States. He's the head of finance for a Christian global organization. And he had heard about crypto a little bit, but had been in corporate finance his whole life. And by the end of this week, he's telling me we're on this African safari at the end. And he says to me, this has been the most spiritually impactful week of my life. And I'm like, wait, the Bitcoin event? Are you sure? He's like, and no, we do bring in like listening prayer and processes that bring God into the conversation. But for him, God was just working in his heart. And he went back and literally transformed his organization and how they do finances. They have a Bitcoin treasury now, and they're doing all these things.
Was he in India?
No, he was not.
Okay.
He was not.
I've never seen any. So as we're going back, we're like trying to we're on our flights or whatever, and he's texting us. I orange pilled the stewardess. I orange pilled the ladies. Like I've never seen anybody like get orange pilled as hard as quickly as he was.
Yeah. So he's now on our board of directors. He's our treasurer now. Been a great help. And then the one last thing I'll say about these events. So we did those 3. It was all grant funded. We're now discerning through, okay, do we pursue funding to do more of these? It's a lot of work. It's probably 2 months of work for probably part-time for me, full-time for my other colleague to plan these events. So we're discerning through, do we do more of them? But what we are doing in April, we have an invite-only event that's called the Bitcoin for Ministry Summit. And our goal is to gather 40 CFOs and heads of finance for a lot of large Christian NGOs. And then we're bringing highly qualified speakers in nonprofit finance and investments and in the Bitcoin space to basically orange pill these boomer CFOs. And so that's the goal. So that's our targeted approach. And we believe that if we can pull that lever and get these guys orange pilled, then these orgs, I mean, they're sending hundreds of millions a year. That's where we're able to see Bitcoin adoption.
They represent tens of thousands of workers on the ground who are economic actors in these places, who are, again, on the front line in places where Fiat rails don't reach. And so it's a very natural, even though they don't realize it yet, there's a very natural relationship between the type of things that are only possible with Bitcoin and the work that they're doing. So actually, Fetty, we had a conversation with.
This,
go ahead.
this is unprecedented, but I'm going to take a call live in our podcast because he needs direction.
Okay.
It's Joe Nakamoto.
Okay.
Joe. Oh, he hung up on me. Let's call him back here.
You can put him on speaker?
Yeah, put him on speaker.
Tell him he's live from Bitcoin Beach.
Joe, you're live from Bitcoin Beach on speaker. We're on the podcast here. No. I wouldn't answer for anybody else, but I know you're probably looking for directions to my house or something. So.
No, I know it's the last one along. Hello, everyone. Buy Bitcoin. Come visit El Tonte. Spend Bitcoin and spend replace.
Spend replace.
I'm half an hour away, so don't worry. I'll let you finish your pod, and then whenever you finish, give me a call.
Okay. All right. Sounds good. We'll see you soon, Joe.
Bye, Joe.
Bye. Ashua and Jordan from Thank God from Bitcoin.
Oh, nice. They do great T-shirts.
Yeah. Yes. That's right.
All right. We'll see you, Joe. Bye.
I need to put that on our website. They make great T-shirts. Joe Nakamoto. That'd be great. We gave him a shirt like 3 years ago, and he still wears it all the time on his travels. But yeah, so we had a conversation with Obi from Fetty, Obi and Renata this past week as they were here for this, and we did something else with Renata. Oh, Renata came and spoke at one of our conferences, so we met her there. But one of the things that Obi said that they found is that as they're trying to figure out like how to make, like how do you find the right type of, or the right relationship between people who are on the ground who can help jumpstart some of these circular economies. One of the things that they find over and over again is that faith-based workers make excellent people. They're excellent informal agents for.
They
some
have
of
the
these
trust.
Yes.
They know what the needs are.
And
they're there, rooted in the community.
They're there, rooted in the community, and they're there to serve the people. And so they're willing to figure out and think outside of the box in terms of other tools that they can use to serve that larger goal of reaching people. And so again, that's why, even though for a lot of people, the God and Bitcoin, those kind of things can be an unnatural relationship. We just have found that for people, it really is much more natural than you might think. So
yeah. I'm kind of riffing on that a little bit. One thing I've been surprised as I've been working in this space is, like I mentioned, at the beginning of the podcast, the primary reason we moved down here as a family was to support missionaries that were working in El Salvador. At that time, El Salvador had the highest murder rate in the world. It was a very challenging place for missionaries to work. So we came down and started an organization that kind of supported all these families behind the scene with counseling, with a place to get away from the dangerous environments they were working in, a number of things like that. And so as we started doing the Bitcoin work too, we obviously wanted to have a positive practical impact too in the communities that we're at. And so those two of those things came together. But one thing that's kind of surprised me is how many Bitcoiners that have come and said, hey, I know you're a Christian. Can you recommend some books, or I have these questions? I've never had a faith, or I had a faith when I was young that I walked away from. But now as I've gotten into the Bitcoin space, as my time preference has gone down and I'm thinking about long term, there's nothing longer term than eternity. And so you see a lot of Bitcoiners starting to come back to the faith of their childhood or faith for the first time. So I don't know if you guys have seen something similar and if you have any theories on why that is.
You want to start?
I think you can go for it. You go start.
So this is actually a topic that Jordan and I spoke on at the summit this week, and it's this reality that we do observe that we have so many stories of people finding God in the rabbit hole. So you jump down the rabbit hole, you don't know what's there, right? Something interests you, something is intriguing, compelling, number go up, it brings you in, and then you learn all these other things. And what they don't tell you is God's in the rabbit hole, and he's pursuing all of us. And we hear these stories again and again. In fact, one of our after our first TGFB conference in Miami, we had baptisms, and there was 2 people. I'll let them share their story, so I won't say who it was. But 2 very well-known influencers in the space got baptized in the Miami Beach after the TGFB conference, and both of them, part of their story was through Bitcoin and the Bitcoin community finding God and actually finding a robust faith in Christ. And so at the summit, we asked the question, okay, we observe this thing, and even if people aren't specifically saying, oh, I'm going to identify as a Christian, they're at least becoming more moral. They're becoming less consumeristic, more like you said, low time preference, or thinking about the future, legacy, family, things that matter beyond just my own kind of carnal animals needs of the moment. And so we asked the question, why does this happen? What are the incentives built within the Bitcoin network that does this to us? Jordan?
Yeah. So I wrote a book along with my buddy Dan Sherman. We wrote this book called The Gospel According to Bitcoin, which basically, again, tries to account for some of what we've seen, right? And so the one example of this, because there's just all kinds of things, whether it's as we've talked with people or just as we've meditated on the way that Bitcoin works, the structure of it, that have just been surprising in terms of the insights that it's born and the similarities between things within the Christian faith. So the example of this, one of the chapters, I can't remember what the chapter is even called. I'm a great representative, great at PR. But one of the stories is basically one day I was trying to send a Bitcoin transaction. I sent it. It was for a couple $100, and so I did it was a low fee.
Uh-oh.
And that time, oh man, that time was depressing. It was probably
A couple millions.
it was probably a few 100,000 sats. So anyhow, I sent the transaction. It was a very low fee environment, so I just did the minimum fee possible, and then the fee environment raised over the course of the day.
Yeah.
And so I didn't even check on it. A couple weeks later,
Probably
it gone by.
Ordinal's fault.
Yeah, probably. Exactly. Yeah. Shout out to the mechanic. So a couple weeks later, I go to check the wallet and it hadn't arrived. And so I thought to myself, oh no, I broke Bitcoin. And so I texted Jimmy Song, have the absurd privilege to have help from some of the best people in the space. So I just said, hey, what happened? And he's like, you just didn't include enough of a fee. So you just need to do what's called a child pays for parent transaction. And so I was like, okay, great. Then I'm like Googling what is So I ended up
Which
finding
I have also had to Google to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
So just the way that it works is, for those who haven't had to experience that, a child pays for parent transaction is you just send an identical transaction from the same wallet to the same wallet, and you include more of a fee, and the second transaction knocks the first transaction through. And so I did it. It worked. And then as I'm sitting there thinking about it, I'm pastoring a small church in Uruguay. It just hits me that the logic of a child pays for parent transaction is the same logic within the scriptural, the Christian story of salvation, which is God sends humanity into the world, and then they fall. He has an intended design for them. They fall short of the transaction. They don't get to the intended destination, and so His solution is to send another transaction, and this is Jesus. And then by virtue of Him getting through, then it enables other transactions to get through as well. And so it just blew my mind that this economic logic is also shared in terms of the way that there's so much economic wording and just word pictures in terms of the scriptural narrative of how to think about something like eternal life and all of these different things. So that's been something that's impacted me. In terms of accounting for what we've observed, again, not necessarily, we have obviously being in the space, shared our own stories, but just accounting for it. There's this quote from C.S. Lewis, who was an atheist, didn't want anything to do with Christianity. He has this quote, and then became a Christian. He has this quote where he says, "I believe in Christianity as I believe the sun has risen, not only because I see it, but because by it I see everything else." And so as people get into Bitcoin has a very similar effect where they get into Bitcoin, and then it serves as these lenses through which they see all these other things. And so as we've talked with people, the reality of how central money is it shapes the incentives of how the world works. And when you understand how monetary systems work, and you understand, oh, okay, so a lot of what we see in the world, we're seeing it not because there's actually market demand from people. We're seeing it because banks and governments can subsidize any kind of idea or anything that they want to, and go against, create their own markets effectively. And so when you remove that idea, when you look at money differently, and money isn't just a positivistic creation of the state, and it is a market chosen thing, it naturally subsidizes all kinds of things that are surprising. And so we just have seen this a lot. And so I think that, and you can see this throughout time, I think that as we move to market chosen money, it's going to subsidize more market chosen other things that aren't necessarily drowned out by fiat false ideas. And so I think as those things go away, we're going to see more of this. And regardless of whether you believe it or not, all throughout history, religion more broadly has been something that has been a market-chosen thing where people opt in and believe in these things. And so, yeah, I think this is a natural thing. Now, again, then you get into, all religions are not created equal. And so then we're in a competitive environment where we can have discussions over, which of these has more rings of truth, and then that just invites other room for conversations to take place. So, this is a whole long conversation that we could have for forever, but
yeah. I can, if you
Anything
want.
to add?
This is a slide that I shared at our summit.
You should have given Paco beforehand. We could've put it up.
Maybe we can add it after
if
the
you turn
fact.
on AirDrop, I can airdrop it to you.
People are squinting at the camera.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah. So
Tell us what's on the slide,
yeah.
Joshua.
So
we can do it later.
This is the idea that Bitcoin helps bring flourishing. This is my thesis. Bitcoin helps bring flourishing by realigning the incentive structure of society back to God's design. It realigns the incentive structure of society back to God's design. So 3 ways it does that. Bitcoin is immutable truth that rewards honest nodes and punishes dishonest ones, and thus we become more humble and truthful people. Second principle is the Bitcoin network rewards hard work and contentment while punishing greed and impatience. Thus, we become more hopeful and low time preference. And then finally, the Bitcoin social layer rewards P2P connection and open source collaboration while punishing scammers and rent seekers. Thus, we become better neighbors and stewards.
Love it. So, did you have something to add?
I was just going to add one more thing. So, one of the things that I've just been impacted by over the last 5 years, 6 years as I've been into this, has been there's a pastor who wrote this article about a philosophy of education, and just basically says he quotes this guy named James Smith, who wrote a book called Desiring the Kingdom, and one of the quotes in this book that this other pastor quotes, the quote goes, "Every pedagogy is rooted in a philosophical anthropology." To which all of your audience right now is going, amen. Right? What in the world does that mean? And so basically, a pedagogy is just a way of teaching. It's just like in a philosophy of education. So he basically says every philosophy of education is first grounded in an understanding of what it means to be human. And so we observe this all over the place. So if people are primarily thinking beings, then education is going to focus on primarily transfer of information. And so this is where, your Bitcoin podcasters, right? There's people who devour Bitcoin podcasts. They listen to them all day long. And so that certainly is one part of what again, according to the Christian conception of these things, it means to be human. But there's also another aspect that is also very important. And that's the practical. There's the philosophical word would be praxeological aspect to this. So there might be tons of Bitcoin programmers who can tell you the ins and outs of the blockchain and how it works and all these things, who aren't necessarily out in the world using Bitcoin and teaching other people how to use it and doing all these things. Those are 2 different skill sets. Yeah. And so fiat currency, the thing that has impacted me is fiat currency says one thing about what it means to be human. So humans, according to fiat, where a small group of people, very powerful people, leverage their power to benefit themselves. They create as much money as they want to maintain power, and they steal that purchasing power from everyday people. So according to the Fiat conception of things, small group of people, very powerful, they govern and rule over, and functionally are better, more powerful than a small group of people, and they can take this from them. There's really little concern for their benefit. That's contrasted with something like Bitcoin, which basically says there's one set of rules that applies to anyone, no matter what, whether they're powerful or rich or whoever they are. Everyone has to acknowledge an authority that's above them. And so there's a real sense in which, even though, in the last 75 years in a more secularized world, we're not comfortable with thinking about them and things in these terms, there's a real sense in which fiat currencies create gods with small g's and then normal people. And so you have a system where there's men who effectively operate as gods, who can create money out of thin air. They can say, let there be fiat, and they can do that. And then Bitcoin, where there is a finite amount of Bitcoin that are out there, you cannot change that reality no matter who you are. And so you have to adapt yourself to it. You have to humble yourself and play by rules that are outside of you. And when you do that, you're rewarded. And when you try to skirt around that and try to do something else, then you get punished. And so this is how everything else in our world works, right? We can't just make up rules of nutritional realities for ourselves. We have to acknowledge, okay, if I eat things that have nutritional value, my body will receive the benefit of it. The same thing works with relationships with each other. This works with, things like gravity. We can't create our own rules of gravity. And so in this way, even though Bitcoin seems novel, it's actually like this ancient novel thing that it's a recovery of these ancient principles that have governed and promoted human flourishing for as long as there's been people.
I love it.
Jordan, the philosopher.
Yes.
I was a philosophy major. I'm sorry. Yeah.
Curious, Joshua, like going forward, especially like with bringing, thank God for Bitcoin, like as part of Brilliance Labs, what are you most excited about and kind of looking forward to? And then we'll kind of wrap up on that.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Mike, for the honor to be able to share and be in this conversation in this beautiful studio here. So I would say as we look out at this next year, there's a lot of visioning and planning that we still have to do to say, okay, TGFB, we ran some conferences, there was some great books. Now, and while doing that, there's always this pressure of, okay, we got to make enough money. There's a certain kind of ramp up time based on the capital he'd already raised. Mm-hmm. Now, if we can raise the funds we need for the first 1 or 2 years, we can kind of take a sigh of relief and just sit back and say, okay, now we don't have to perfectly just make enough money. Now we can dream about how to have the greatest impact. And we have some ideas. We have a few things in the chute already that we're developing. I shared about that ministry summit. We're building a P2P network of global Christian workers. We're building a consulting service for Christian orgs to help understand Bitcoin, but do it more hands-on. We have invitations to go travel internationally. So really, I would say we haven't landed on exactly what are the most strategic things, but we have the opportunity to really stop, think, and pray and listen to the community to say, hey, what is the most strategic use of our time and resources?
Yeah. The other thing I would say is like the goal is like nonprofits need money to operate, but like the goal at the same time is like we don't need this gazillion-dollar endowment where we're just sitting on all this money forever. That's the last thing that we want to do. At the same time, you need money to operate, and to give people the opportunity to give of the abundance of their work to something that they care about. That really is something that we take for granted as something that we need as people. Denying yourself and giving of your work is something that can bring you a tremendous amount of joy as the giver. Yeah. And so the Christian scriptures talk about it's better to give than to receive. And so this is something that, as we've met some of these large donors, like they talk to us about this all the time. Like it's so encouraging to think about the fact that I can take the fruits of the labor of my normal job, and I can convert it into work and ministry to other people that will outlast my life. And so that's something that we, don't want to take for granted and take seriously. And so again, the goal is not to raise a gazillion dollars and do all these things, or gazillion sats and do all these things.
Speak for yourself, Jordan.
The goal is to raise, as much as we need, the smallest amount that we need to get out there and make the maximum amount of impact, and then leverage telling the stories of how Bitcoin is changing lives all over the world to then just kind of, hey, this is what we're doing. Yeah. So again, the goal is not endless comfort and, where we don't have to go out there and work our rear ends off. But at the same time, again, this is, with a for-profit entity, especially when you're taking investment, like, you want to honor your investors, and you want to give a return, a monetary return to them. And so as I've been working my rear end off over the last few years, I've got 5 kids. Oshawa has 8 kids. And so it is one of these things where it's like, I see other businesses where it's like single guys working. I'm like, oh my gosh, I would, in some ways, I'm like, this would be easier, if I was just a single guy and didn't, have to worry about these things. And so again, it's like, but I do. And so I have that responsibility and love that responsibility. And so this seems like the natural next step, given where we are. This seems like a logical step where we can both continue to be wave our Bitcoin freak flag, let that fly within the worlds and the networks that we have, while still responsibly, loving and serving our families in a way that will allow them to be, the next generation of workers who see, both who are native to both the Christian world and to Bitcoin. That's the most impactful relationships that we have in our life, and so we don't want to take those for granted during the limited amount of time that we have with them before they get old and forget us.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. So let people know how they can follow you guys, how they can support, how they can get the book, how they can be involved with Brilliance Labs, all that.
So brilliancelabs.org/Bitcoin is our Bitcoin Ventures site. So it describes the different projects that we're working on. We have a community that you can join, and we have resources that we've created. The brilliancelabs.org/TGFB is the specific announcement page talking about the merger, and Jordan joining as a fellow to kind of be under Brilliance Labs and develop this program and ministry. Both those pages, you can donate fiat, and you can do that either
which will be converted to Bitcoin.
Yes, as a monthly basis, or you can give Bitcoin. We had someone say, "Hey, I want to give some ETH because I'm trying to get rid of it." So we do have
we're like
one of these,
laundering their ETH.
We have one of those services that auto convert things for us, but we're only auto converting crypto. Bitcoin we will hold, and if you ever want to have us back on and talk about Bitcoin treasuries, we're pioneers and in that area of Bitcoin endowments and how to fund nonprofit work. So
awesome. We'll have to do a segment on that.
Because honestly, what they're doing is incredible. And so we've had some world-class help. Brilliance Labs has had some world-class help on that. It's been incredible. So very laudable work in terms of like how you can support us in ways that aren't just flatly giving of currency. We have our conferences, so we're going to do an event the day before BitBlock Boom in Fort Worth on April 9th, and so you can buy tickets to that. If you have a business that you think would be interested in, or business or an org that's interested in again sponsoring that'd be one way that you can help. Another one you mentioned a kids book that we just released. Basically, I wrote this kid's book. I was messing around with a buddy's Mid-Journey account a few years ago, and one of the returns, it showed 2 kids with an umbrella, and within about 15 minutes, it was like a lightning strike. I had the broad strokes of a Bitcoin kids book that written out, and so it took us a long time. So the whole thing was written without any AI. The whole thing was illustrated without any AI, and so it's a Bitcoin book that never mentions Bitcoin. So it's called The Orange Umbrella. It's nominally a kid's book, but it's more like a Pixar movie where it's nominally for kids, but also really for adults as well. And so we designed it to be something that Bitcoiners can give to their non-Bitcoiner friends and family, and they're going to do a sly roundabout way to covertly orange pill. So that's something where, again, you can go to tgfb.com/TOU and order copies of that. We've got a whole bunch of them, both in hardcover and in soft cover. And then we even had like some Bitcoin businesses reach out to us about placing orders to give as customer gifts to their clients. So if you're a Bitcoin business and you want to do something like that, you can reach out to contact@tgfb.com, and we're happy to do that. So
Awesome. Well, guys, it's always a joy to be able to gather with you, and this is our first podcast together too. So
I know, for real. Grateful for you, Mike.
It's fun, and looking forward to seeing what direction God's going to take Brilliance Labs and the combining of these two entities. A lot of things to look forward to there. So thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, Bitcoin family, we want to kind of end the podcast this month with a special tribute to our dear friend Andy. As a lot of you guys know, Andy recently passed away after battling cancer, and Andy was really the heart and soul behind this podcast getting off the ground. He was the one that kind of helped convince me to do it, that designed the studio, that came up with the format, and did the great intro that we had, and has really been the energy behind it. He brought Paco in and kind of trained Paco to take over the daily production, but Andy still always had his kind of fingerprint on what was going on here. And so we just ask you guys to really be keeping his family in prayer, his wife Suez and his daughter Maven, as they kind of struggle through this time. And we just want to give a shout out to Andy and just what an amazing friend he was. He was the guy that everybody loved. You didn't find anybody who didn't love Andy. And so rest in peace, brother.